so honored and excited to have this opportunity to meet and speak with Joe Taft. Joe, thank you so much for joining me today.
Todd, thanks for having me.
It's really an honor. I got introduced to you via Andrew Jones, and you live in Asheville, North Carolina, I believe. Am I right?
I do, yeah. I live in Asheville, and right
And
now I'm sitting and kind of looking over downtown. It's awesome, yeah.
it's beautiful. For those of you listening, if you want to have a look on our YouTube channel, you have an incredible tall trees, green trees behind you. Shafts of light are coming down through the trees over your shoulder. It's very picturesque. I love Asheville. How long have you lived in Asheville?
Um, I lived in I really moved to Asheville. Um, I bought my first house here in 2001. So before I was kayaking a lot, I was a professional kayaker, so I was kind of in and out of like I traveled around a lot. And I bought a house here in 2001. So that was the year that I really considered myself, living here, even though I was still a little bit on the road.
Gotcha.
So,
You're a professional kayaker.
well, that could be a little bit of a stretch, but I kayak for a living and I made money doing it. I don't know if you could call that a professional or
I
not.
think so. I think once you start generating income off of your passion,
A very little
you
income, just so you know, but
okay, fair. I
yeah,
agree. It wasn't like going for a Wall Street job. It was more of a love what you do type of job.
I've always done that. Yep, I've always
Yeah.
just from from a child early, I was always doing,
Well, I'm
you know,
curious.
doing what I love to do. So.
That's cool. I'm curious. Well, where did you grow up? And then what was the transition from where you grew up to the first time you got in a kayak?
Yeah, so I grew up in Eastern North Carolina and I'm 51 years old now. So that was, in the 70s.
Oh,
And it was a
yes.
very, it was in the Bible Belt. And so I had this opportunity to experience, um, fundamentalist Christianity, and which I think really shaped my way to become a yoga teacher because my family really well, I'll use the word religion. They really use the word religion as the staple of life, the foundation of what's important. And so I learned that, growing up. And I feel really fortunate about that. My mom was this spiritual practitioner. She, when she passed away, she had close to 1,000 people at her funeral
Oh, wow.
because she was this real staple in the community. And I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't even realize it till probably till after she passed away 7, 8 years ago that influenced me so much. She influenced me so much through her religious practice.
Yes.
Like she was praying in the morning when I would get up and things like that. So I think that really influenced me a lot to move towards a practice like yoga.
Oh, man, I can't tell you everything you've said thus far.
Mhm.
I'm really happy to hear
Mhm.
because the fact that you are acknowledging how important it is to have family value and
Mhm.
um, some connection of something bigger and that we can potentially trust and believe
Mhm.
in. And that also, though, you embrace a culture or all different religious viewpoints that yoga may or may not present. Because I mean, do you find sometimes that maybe if we're in a certain element of the Bible Belt, that maybe someone might say, "Oh boy, I don't think you should be doing yoga," but you're seeing the connection between all faiths and or spirituality as being connected, I'm guessing.
I am. I see them all very similar. Although I had a lot of things I had to work through
Mm.
by growing up in that kind of it was kind of a black or white mentality where there was right and there was wrong. And I think that was good. Again, I think that was really good for me to experience. But now I study like non-dual tantra,
Mm.
and we don't really believe in right or wrong. We just believe in there's what we like and what we don't like. Well, let me rephrase that. Right or wrong is not the best terminology. Let me say um, good or bad. That's really the better terms to use. We don't really believe that things are good or bad because, um, I mean, how many times has something happened to you and you're like, oh my gosh, that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And then like 2 months later, you're like, oh my gosh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
So true.
So we just like things or we don't like them. I definitely think there's to correct my first wording, I definitely think there's you know, I believe in the yamas and the niyamas. I believe in ethical precepts, and it's best to act with compassion and with truthfulness and all those things.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I really appreciate you realizing my tone when I speak about that. So yeah, thanks so much.
that's cool. And you said Eastern North Carolina, so I'm thinking either Outer Banks or somewhere close to.
Yeah, yeah, not on the Outer Banks, but about an hour from the Outer Banks. So yeah, I went to the beach a lot as a child, and so yeah,
That's
you know,
cool. And I'm 50. I am also a 70s baby, and
uh-huh,
I grew up here in Florida, right
okay,
near the beach.
okay,
And the 70s, just to reminisce a little bit here,
sure,
what a time period. To be on a bicycle and just having all this abundance of nature around, and parents just being like, well, just make sure you're home for dinner,
totally,
and you just
totally.
took off and climbed trees and went to the ocean and in the rivers. And I mean, and we can still do that now. And it's still all here now. So I'm not saying that that's not here, but it was just
Right.
an amazing
It
time.
really was an amazing time. I really enjoyed growing up in
That's
a
cool.
pretty relatively small town and having woods close by and all that. Yeah.
So then kayaking, when was the first kayak adventure?
Yeah. So my dad would bring me up to the mountains of North Carolina when I was a child, and we would go down a river in a canoe, like a whitewater canoe, and we'd fall out sometimes and things like that. I felt like it was quite dangerous. And then, um, and then in that process, I decided to um, when I went to college, I decided to live in Western North Carolina where we would come in the summer sometimes. So that got me like into mountain sports.
Yeah.
And that's when I started really kayaking, snow skiing. I'd already snow skied a little bit, but snow skiing, kayaking, and I started traveling and really embracing um, what I call eco sports, like eco jock sports. Um, like where you're just gravity type sports and especially kayaking. That was like my big one. So it's phenomenal. Like it's like absolutely mind blowing to like go down a rapid and learn how to do it enough that you feel like you're dancing with the water and go off waterfalls. And it's
Oh,
really, oh my gosh, it's just so intense. But it was super hard on my body.
I bet.
Like it was very, very hard on my body. And that's ultimately what initially got me into yoga is my back hurt
Mm,
really badly. I was like
mm.
25 years old. My back was excruciating. Like there were mornings when I couldn't get out of bed or I had to get out really slowly. And that process kind of got me into yoga. Wow, I got to kind of warm up my hips here a little bit before I start moving. Definitely before I get in my boat, because I know I'm going to hurt later. Later in the day, I'm going to really
Yeah.
hurt. Not
Yeah.
only I thought it was from the impact of always impacting really hard, but I learned later it was the position and just the way that my musculature was building from sitting in a boat so much. And so I started stretching. I would smoke a bunch of pot and I would find a spot in the sun and I would just move my body and I did that for years, not really with a teacher, just trying to figure it all out.
Interesting.
And that's really what got me into yoga.
No, that's cool. And
So,
so I am curious though, because I love watching kayaking. I've only had the experience of whitewater
mhm.
adventures in relation to North Carolina, just getting in an inner tube in Cherokee and just
Yeah, yeah.
going down the rivers and just having so much fun, but not to the level like what you're talking, where you're in a kayak, like potentially going off the edge of like a miniature waterfall or something like
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
Totally.
What are some of the biggest, gnarliest rivers you've had a chance to traverse?
Well, there's a lot of, when it rains here, all these rivers fill up with water. So there's a lot of options.
Yeah.
There's quite a few that I've only done once. But there's a river
Because of
just
the craziness of it, because of the dangers.
no, because it rains and
Oh,
there's
I
like so
understand.
many things to do, and you
Got it.
just like go
Yeah.
down one and then you're like, oh, that was pretty cool, but you have your favorites, you jump around. So, but
Got
when it's not raining, there's a dam release river near here. It's called the Green River.
Mm,
and it's a creek. It's one of those things that normally just fills up with water when it rains, but this one has a dam at the top, so they release it every day, like not every day, but frequently at like 8 in the morning. So it's like you get this really incredible
cool.
experience of going down a super steep, like waterfalls, everything.
Nice.
And that's probably why I ended up moving to Asheville because that
Uh-huh.
creek is like always has water in it, so to speak. And so I just love that river. So that's why I moved here.
That's cool.
Or that's why I ended up staying here, you could say.
That
Um,
makes sense. That makes sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And was your first official yoga class where, when, and with who?
Yeah, so I since I was on the road a lot, I started figuring out that I could go to like a YMCA and take a yoga class. And I which I'd already been doing a bunch of yoga already, right? And or I mean I called it stretching, or whatever, but it was quite yogic actually. Sometimes I would light candles and like get my nervous system to downregulate because I figured all that felt better. Um and then so I would go to just these YMCA classes. Well, once I was back in Asheville and I went to a YMCA class, and the teacher at the end of class was moving away. And I had been to her class like 7 or 8 times. She was phenomenal. She was just really powerful. And I turned to her and I said, it was so nice, being at your classes. And I wish I could keep going. She goes, well, what you need to do is you need to go to my teacher's class. And her name is Mary Kay West. And so it's this Southern woman named Mary Kay West. And I did. I found her. She had a little cute studio down by the river area here in Asheville. And I started studying with her, and she was like this little Southern woman was a
Mhm.
powerhouse at
Yeah.
yoga. Not like power, like I mean, it was physical, but she studied all the limbs of yoga. She was a real yoga practitioner. And she really turned me on to yoga as a whole spectrum practice. And
Nice.
then I studied with her for a while, and she was the kind of teacher that could really take me on as a student. And then at some point I said I want to really learn more, and she goes, well, I'm studying a new system of yoga called Anusara, and this was in maybe 1999. And I said, what's that? She goes, well, I studied with this system that had been, some of you might be familiar with it. It was John Friend founded it. And then once she turned me onto that, I really became a student of Anusara. And I studied Anusara for quite a few years until about 2012. I was fully certified in 2007. And it was really quite powerful because my body was feeling a little better,
Mm,
a good bit better. And because it was an alignment based system. And I had on my own, I was just studying intuitive type movement. And so I got really into, wow, if I put my body in this position, these muscles release and I feel better. And at the time, that's really what I needed. I needed somebody who understood the body really well
yes.
and could teach me how to, like, for lack of a better word, align, right?
Yes.
So
Amazing. I remember I was in Southern California and a friend of mine went and practiced with John Friend, and he came back and he was lit up with excitement. And I guess in some way or shape or form, John had called him up onto the stage and had gotten him into, I think it was like where you go into Hanumanasana and you catch your back foot and go into like the Ekapada Rajakapotasana catch. I don't know the Sanskrit name of that pose. What is the name of that?
I don't know,
Yeah.
like
But something super deep
yeah,
that he was like not
Kapotasana
even
and Hanumanasana, yeah.
yeah, not even ready for at all.
Right, right.
And didn't get injured. And he was just like, I don't know how I got into that position and how he got me into it. And he was like, I was blown away. He was just so on fire from the
Mm.
experience. Did you ever have any of those sort of moments?
Oh, many, many. Yeah, many of those moments. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
cool.
was kind of his gift was like really infusing a whole classroom or an individual, which kind of infused the whole classroom with Shakti.
Did you
He
feel
was
you had a special mojo with the yoga? That's across the board. The people that study with him had that similar sort of admiration for him.
Yeah, it was a real Shakti awakening type of experience.
Gotcha.
And I love that. I mean, I was a adrenaline addict at the time because I
Yeah.
had been running big waterfalls and I was kind of finding, which I mean, I look back at that now and I was like, probably not the best idea to trade, in a sense, an addiction for an addiction in yoga. Um, but that's but that's what drew me, his charismatic personality, you know, feeling just so much Shakti in my body, so much prana alive. That's what he brought. I mean, sometimes I wouldn't sleep for days after the workshops, and that was I was young. I was young enough that I was okay. And but yeah, it was really, really powerful to be around a teacher like that.
How
And
did how
yeah,
did the fallout around John Friend affect you?
yeah. And so then the fallout happened. He started kind of acting outside of the domain of what you might call ethical. And that was like a really big deal. You know, some of the top teachers started kind of dropping off, and then people started asking questions, and so and I kind of stuck with it for a little while. I really wanted to, and I even called him and we chatted, and he's like, "Yeah, I made some mistakes," and he seemed really humble, and so I kind of hung around for a while. But then his actions weren't really aligning um with what he'd even said to me on the phone. Um so the fallout was a really big deal for a lot of people, and for me, the biggest part of the fallout was um that I had a global community. You know, I could go somewhere and study yoga, like New York City, for example. I could go there and there'd be like 200 people there, and I would know like 100 of them. And some of them would be from Australia or wherever. So I had this really big global community, which I feel was very powerful. And then I had these teaching principles that I taught from, and and all that kind of shattered. So I had to rediscover myself as a yoga teacher.
Yes.
And I did, and I went in and I got into I studied different things. I studied Pilates for a while. I studied weight training because I'm really skinny. I'm really flexible and really skinny, so I studied weight training. This was really good for me. Um, and I studied some other methods of yoga. Before I had to study like Ashtanga and so many other things, um, but yeah, I got to kind of branch out in a sense, and that was a really powerful time for me.
That's
Was a
so
really,
cool.
really powerful time for me.
That's cool that now with a little bit of time to be able to look back and the way you said initially in our conversation about seeing things that might seem bad now, you look back and you go, that actually was really good. And it's neat to hear how you've had enough
Mhm.
time to process all that and the growth process that occurred because of what seemed tragic. And now you're in a better place for it, it sounds like.
Oh yeah. I mean, to take, um, you know, I don't really believe that with my upbringing or Americans, I don't think like we work well with the kind of the guru model. But I'm really fortunate that I got to actually experience that. Like I know what that feels like on a really, I feel like a very authentic level. I know what that feels like. And again, I don't think it really works in our society the way we were brought up. Or at least I'll speak, let me say, I don't feel like it works for me in the way that I was brought up. And so, but I did get to experience it and it was like so cool, you know, because you learn so much when you trust. I had a few teachers really that I trusted this way, but I trusted so much that I learned so fast. And I would not undo that, although I had to undo a lot of the things that I did learn.
Yeah.
So, and that was suffering. Unlearning something that's really deep in your system is 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 I mean, to me, is like the definition of suffering.
Well said.
But I'm really happy that I went through that. Yeah, I learned about Shakti too. You know, I really have a really intimate relationship because I learned Tantra there, right?
Hmm.
That's where I really learned Tantra, not only from him, but I learned from Douglas Brooks, Carlos Pomida, Sally Kempton. These are all people he's encouraged us to study with. Bill Mahoney. I mean, these guys are badasses. And and I dove deep into that. And so I really learned the philosophy of Tantra there. And that stuck with me, man. That back to me growing up in a religious environment, I'm all of a sudden learning a system that's the opposite of what I learned growing up on some level, but the guts were really the same. Let go of your individuality and trust in something greater than yourself. I mean, come on, like to really, like I grew up like kind of having to believe that, but now I was all in a situation where I was like feeling it in my body. Like I was honoring like the way that the energy in my body was pulsing and I could sense that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like not something I have to like believe in. This is something I can like I can feel the pulse of it and there's an order to it. I can like play with it. You know, when my pelvis is heavy and my spine is lifted, my heart tends to open and I am like more open to the celebration of life, you know? So I'm so grateful. Just so
Mm.
grateful for the whole journey, you know.
Man, you communicated that really well.
Thank you.
I sense that. Nice
Yeah.
job. Do you,
So so
yeah, please.
so can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Because I don't really know your yoga that well. I
Please.
know you know Andrew. Like, can you tell me just a little bit, and that might help deepen our conversation, so I
Yeah.
can speak to what is your background, and maybe your listeners know, so you can give me a shorter answer or a longer answer, whichever you think is appropriate for your podcast, for your podcast. Also.
Thank you. I'll
Hmm.
try to keep it short, but things that I feel like we have in common. I grew up surfing and I
Hmm.
traveled the world and got a chance to surf
Hmm.
incredible places. So I can also attest to the thrill of gravity dropping down into a situation where you have split second time to make a move that will determine your reality with either suffering or 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 some sukha, some sweetness,
Yeah, yeah.
a split moment, right? Like big, big heavy barreling waves. And so I love that. That's why I'm
Mhm.
not a big kayaker, but I feel you on that.
Same thing.
And that played a big part in my discovery of yoga. I had moved back to Florida, and Florida's not known for its, barreling incredible reef break waves. And so I started practicing Bikram yoga.
Mm,
Initially, when I was 18, I got introduced to Krishna consciousness, and I started hanging out with
mm,
Krishna devotees. So I initially
mm,
chanting Hare Krishna mantra was my initial yoga practice. But then I started doing Bikram, and like the intensity of the heat and the challenge of it and being able to be physical and feel that energy in a room without needing to worry about the conditions, the wind, the sun, I just was like, this is it. I
mm,
can feel surfing in my body anywhere, anytime. So I feel like I got so hooked on it, started practicing massage therapy as well, and
mm,
really falling in love with anatomy. And then just from
mm,
there, I've just kind of I keep studying and seeking and practicing. My wife and I have had our yoga studio here in Juno Beach for the last 18 years together, and then we had
mm,
co-owned a Bikram studio in San Diego for 3.5 years prior to that. So we've been teaching together for 20 something years, and so we did go to India and study with Patabi Joyce. Kind of like there was a big fallout with the Bikram world, and
mhm,
prior to all that, I thought, well, let me go to India and study with Patabi Joyce, and then there was a big fallout in that world. So I've had multiple fallout situations too. I can
mhm,
say that I've grown so much and learned so much from that as well, even though at the moment it felt like a dark night of the soul type of questioning, So
mhm,
now currently, and I can also attest to back pain. I'm relearning everything all over
mhm,
again due to some degenerative disc stuff. And I'm really in love with it again, and I've had so many ups and downs over the years of just being absolutely infatuated and then having questions of like, what have I done to myself and what am I doing to myself? And
mhm,
so I'm completely enthralled with what yoga brings and how it just has been such an incredible tool for my own personal self-discovery. And it's
mhm,
still going. And I'm just last night we got a group together. We're right near the beach. We went down and watched the full moon. It was the flower moon, and had such an incredible community experience last night that I was driving home going, I don't think life could get any better.
Mm.
I don't think it could. I think this is it. I'm not, yeah.
Wow.
So I really, yeah, I'm in a good place right now, thankfully. But I've been doing this podcast for 4 years. Listeners, you probably have heard me, complain a lot too over the years. But right now, I'm in a good place. Thank you for
Nice.
asking.
Yeah, of
What
course.
what kind of thoughts did that prompt for you?
Yeah, I love that we have this similar background of um, really um, an embrace of life from an early age, I think. A real, I mean, if you're traveling around surfing, you're really like, you're really a seeker when if you were kind of traveling the way I am, you're kind of seeking. You're
Yes,
like seeking
100%
a high, I think, on some level.
true.
And get into yoga, which especially as we age, is a way to like embrace that high, but make it a connection to something greater than yourself, because otherwise it's just going to burn out. You're going to burn out in anything that you do, um, if you don't make the connection to something higher.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
So yeah, I love our parallels.
Thank you. I know. I'm so excited. This is amazing. You
Mm.
have made mention prior to us hitting the record button that you're offering a mythology course. So I'm curious, what myths have you and or do you currently draw from and see parallels with your own life and what that myth tells?
Yeah, so just to back up a little bit, I believe in mythology. I think it's similar to like a yoga text. I Just for simplicity's sake, I categorize a myth very similar to a yoga text. It's packed. It's packed with knowledge. It's packed with teachings. I like to think of a yoga text like a sutra or a mythological story as a zip file. They're kind of going extinct, but like you double click on the zip file and it opens up and it's like thousands of documents. So that's kind of how I see um, a yoga text, and I also see mythology that way. Um, the piece that I love about the mythology is that I see mythology as our dream world, which is our unconscious. Like our dreams kind of come up from our unconscious, and mythology is telling the story of our unconsciousness and bringing it up. And I mean, what happens in the mythology? Hanuman like tears his heart open. And that's kind of like something that happens in your dream. Like you have these intense experiences of like ripping your heart open. And you can do that like in a yoga practice. Like you can take your attention like into your heart and you can almost like connect the conscious mind with the subconscious mind because you were told a story and maybe you even felt that story in your body. We sometimes call that an awakening, when you're not thinking, but you really sense the story. The story starts to leave, but you start to feel like you're in a dream state in your body, and you open your heart, for example, which is really like not a good idea if you don't have a skill set called yoga, right? If you don't have a tool set to handle that opening. But if you're studying yoga, you have that skill set. You know what it's like to like really fall deeply in love with nature or deeply in love with another human being, and you're completely okay with it because I mean, falling in love is like so scary. I mean, whether it's another person or it's like even in love with your meal can be like super scary if you're open on that level. But you have the skill set of yoga to be able to like live life that fully. That to me is mythology. It's to like get that subconscious to come out. So you're not living in the dark, so to speak. You're like bringing all of yourself to the experience of life.
Well said.
Thank you.
Amazing. And so you're a big fan of Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, I'm a big Campbell fan. Yeah, I love the guy.
Love
What
Joseph
a
Campbell.
beautiful. Yes, that's
His
great.
books are incredible. I mean, that
Hmm.
when I first came, Hero, is it Hero with a Thousand Faces?
Mm.
That
Yeah,
one's
never read that one, but yeah.
absolutely amazing. His is it Bakshish and Brahman? Did you read that one? That was incredible of his journeys through India.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, he is so deep. So
Yeah, he's
then
incredible.
Which, if we were to draw from a philosophy rooted in India, what one, and I love that you brought up Hanuman because the Ramayana
Hmm.
has so many beautiful stories, and I love the element of how devoted Hanuman is and this perfection of devotee and I also love the story of Hanuman has been cursed and can't remember he can do anything and the
I
idea
love that
like
part. He
panting
doesn't remember his
no,
power until
he
he's
doesn't remember
reminded.
until he's reminded, which I feel like is a reminder to us that we often doubt ourselves and that potentially we can remind ourselves that we can achieve probably a lot more than we really believe we can.
Totally.
What myths what are speaking to you these days?
Well, um, I'm about to teach a 6 week series. So it's like this. I've been doing for about 20 years. I've been teaching these 6 week series where people take 6 classes in a row so the information can build. Because I find that to be much more powerful than, you've probably figured out when we teach a public yoga class, there could be new people there, and the classes here can be quite big. So um, there could be 4 or 5 new people that I've never met in class. So I have to kind of start over every time. But over a series, I get to kind of unpack something. And my next 6 week series is the gods of yoga and Hanuman, Ganesha, Shiva, because the last 6 week series I taught was on the goddesses,
Mm.
and I'm a big fan of goddess worship. And the way that I like to define that is that everything in this world has like a flavor, a sense. Everything has like a flavor. It has like a flavor that we like. It's like blooming and blossoming, and we're just like drawn to that blooming and blossoming, and we might call that Lakshmi, and because that's what Lakshmi represents, like the full manifestation of beauty in its climatic form. And then you have, um, for example, times in your life where you're like, oh my God, this was really tough. My community's been torn apart, or I've lost a teacher, or my yoga practice is drying up now, or something. And that those challenging times could be called Durga. Like Durga is the one um, who you step into for the power to be like rejuvenated and reborn, so to speak, and to fight the battle of getting pulled into the internet. Like the internet, like oh my God, I'm like spending too much time on the internet. I need Durga. I like how uh, I just read this thing by Prince the other day, and it says he goes, computer's cool. It's cool to get on the computer, but don't let the computer get on you.
Oh yeah.
It's cool. It's cool to use the computer. Just don't let the computer use you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that would be like Durga, and you're feeling you're like getting overwhelmed with. I'm a 12 stepper, so I have a background of addiction, and so I have to invoke this goddess energy called Durga, and then you have like you're in your really deep dark times of your life when you're unsure and you can't see where you're going and you feel like you're just completely broken down. We call that Kali, right? It's the goddess. She's the dark one. She's the one that's like your compost rotting in your backyard, you know. And she's you lying in bed at night going, I don't know if I can actually deal with my next what I have going on in my life right now. I'm completely torn down. She's like the hag, you know. Um, and you are that at times. You are all these energies. And so I'm a big fan of goddess study, goddess worship.
That's a
And
great explanation.
yeah, and we
Thank you for
study. Yeah, and we honor all the goddesses, in a sense. We honor all the parts of ourselves in this tradition. Um, so yeah, thanks for
amazing.
listening.
Amazing. How do you reconcile your childhood upbringing under monotheism with a passion and a love for, am I wrong in saying polytheism?
That's appropriate. I think
Okay.
that's at least some depends on how, I have my
Mhm.
hands like drawing away from one another if you're just
Mhm.
listening, like
Mhm.
how far on either side of the spectrum of those two things.
Yeah.
And the way that I grew up and the way that I study now are quite different, but in some ways they're really the same.
Mm.
I just think they're just at one, they're like if in this tradition we call Shiva, that which is like holds everything. Um, and then Shakti is that which is turning and changing. Shiva on one end is like of the stillness of a still mind, a room, an empty room that nobody's in there, but you walk into the room and you can sense the stillness and your mind is calm and there's like you're so present, there's like no thinking. That in this tradition, in my tradition, or the way at least I think about it, that would be Shiva, and Shakti would be the turning and the churning and all the changes and all the cycles of nature and so the Christianity was just way more towards the Shiva side. There's
Yeah.
this one force that is um, in their tradition governing everything, and you just have to align with that. You are a sinner in a sense, and you just have to, which is cool. I mean, they're just saying, hey, surrender first. You're such a sinner that you just have to surrender, just like the addicts. All the addicts say, I'm an addict. I realize I totally screwed up, and I have to recognize that before I can like move towards Shiva, move towards the stillness. So I have no problem with all the other systems. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I definitely am geared towards the other side of things, of the Shakti side, which is the highs and the lows and the good and the bad. And I'm okay with all that now.
That's cool. I'm curious, like I'm just gonna paint a scenario and just I'm curious how you navigate this potential scenario. You go for a holiday meal with a family, an extended
Hmm.
family member, and the extended
Hmm.
family member um, starts to, question you about your current outlook on life, and we'll just say that their outlook is of one idea, and yours is here, and you're seeing that they're one and the same, and there's a spectrum. How do you strategize your responses and or your um, way of being authentic to who you are and what you feel, but not engaging in a way that would cause the other person to feel like you're argumentative with them? Does that make sense? Was that a little too
Very,
abstract, or
that
does
was,
that?
no, that was very clear
Okay.
and such a real life situation. I love that. I thought it was perfectly stated.
Okay.
Todd, thanks.
Thank
Yeah.
you. All right.
Um, so I try to find the similarities first.
Good one.
Like back up, like big picture first,
Yeah.
step way back and just see if we can find some similarities. And then, and a lot of times you don't actually get a chance to talk about your differences. In that I just have to be okay with that. So all the ways in which, we have a similar view. I think all people want to appreciate the gift of life and to appreciate maybe their belief system. And I think it's so great that people have belief systems. And so if if I believe there's only one thing, because I'm a non-dualist, I believe all the things that they have are, from the big picture at least, all the things that they think about and believe in are part of the one. So I just try to find that oneness first.
Nice.
And usually that's really all that it leads to. But if
Yeah.
there's a deeper conversation, I'm also okay with an argument. Um, if they want to engage in a little deeper conversation where
Mm-hmm.
there is some tension, then I think that's a really healthy part of life. Um, then I'll call that Durga has come to the table or whatever, come to the
Yeah.
situation,
That's what I
right?
was thinking. I saw confidence right when he said that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I do my tendency is to stay on the positive side with family members, or maybe like a yoga practitioner. I'm okay with having a deeper dialogue because I know it will, scab up over time. But a family member, I usually just stay with the similarities. And anytime it gets to be a deeper conversation and we start to find our differences, And if there's tension in that differences, I try to keep coming back to the similarities. And so it stays family like. It stays
Mm,
we feel like we stay family the whole time.
nice.
Because I mean, have you ever argued with someone and gotten your point across really clearly, but it only pushed them the other direction? They
Yeah.
can't even hear you. They can't even hear you till you're on the same side.
Yeah, that's a good
It's,
point.
it's the problem with politics now. Everybody's like,
Yeah.
their statements, in my opinion, are statements that push the other side away.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't expect them to be able to I don't expect a politician to be able to um, you know, find the big picture between people because that's not their gift. But I think us as yoga practitioners, we have the, I mean, we have the ability. A yoga teacher is basically somebody who's hopefully gotten clear enough with their philosophy and clear enough with their words that they can communicate in a way that there's a connection first. Again, because nobody will hear, the other side won't hear, the other two sides won't hear each other unless it's from connection.
Great point. How does a non-dualist and or how do you view the turmoil in the global picture? Like if we watch the news, we could potentially tune into a story that seems fairly scary, like threatening and all sorts of kind of heaviness. I'm curious, when you see that, does it affect you or are you able to kind of see the Durga in it? The
Are you saying that seeing like in a certain situation that's challenging, or are you saying like like the great unraveling we're experiencing now?
Yeah, I think I feel yeah, yeah. I mean, if I turn on and I see a war over here and a war over
Oh,
there
I see.
and like a lot of turmoil, like a lot of differencing of opinion, a lot of um I I guess I'm enjoying the way that well when you said the Shiva and the Shakti and the balance of the duality of the stillness with the churning
Hmm.
and then like you're saying the ability to recognize the Kali, the destruction, the real our darker side, our heavier side, and then maybe not to use the word darker, but just
That's
our
fair.
yeah,
Doctor's good. Yeah.
but then somehow appreciating like that ability to actually appreciate it. So I guess on some level, I could look at all these tumultuous scenarios in the world and see that it is somehow is serving a higher purpose or a greater purpose. Like it's actually okay, even though it's so hard to stomach.
It
Is
is
that
so hard. It's so hard to stomach. It really is.
hard to stomach, isn't it? I mean, I don't, I don't
It
know it's
really
not just
is.
me. I know, yeah.
Yeah, 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 totally. Yeah, you know, and I would love to hear your answer also because obviously you're so steeped. But yeah, I think it is hard to stomach. And um, you know, I just believe that consciousness is expanding. That's the nature of it.
Mm,
And I believe that it expands in a way that it can get an experience of itself. And a lot of times that experience of itself is through really intense experiences like destruction. And and
destruction is an example is almost an example of expansiveness, like
that's right. Absolutely.
that
You
even though
wouldn't,
it's still expanding, even though it might appear to be an involution or a closing in or like an in like yeah, I see. All right.
yeah. So we're, you know, I mean, you know, the foundation of the philosophy that I study is consciousness wants to just experience itself. And um and the intensity of life, you know, gives such a mirror. I mean, how many times do we turn on a movie and it's dramatic? We want to get a reflection of ourselves. That's not because that's because who we are. That doesn't have anything to do with us as individuals. That's because that's the in the DNA of consciousness herself.
Oh, cool.
So, so I mean, we're just acting out consciousness's journey. Now we can steer it. We can steer it some, which is cool. So now we're talking about the practice of yoga on some level. We can start to organize the prana and organize the consciousness in a way that it turns back and gets a clear image of Shiva, stillness. And in that process, um, we're not controlling, we're just co-participating in a way that maybe we don't participate so much in the destruction. Now, are we? Yeah, of course. We're all participating in the destruction because it's the journey we're on right now as a civilization. But I think it feels good to not participate as much because we have say so over it. Hopefully, because the journey in this unraveling of consciousness is for us to really see the truth. Truth is kind of the foundation, in my opinion, of the practice. So in the journey of trying to be conscious or to see nature in its truest form, we have more say so over how our own consciousness or how consciousness unravels inside of us. And so this is our work. Um, we do have some say so. We can choose that life is a blessing beyond deeper than our recognition. It is, and that's my approach. And we can also recognize that it is the most intense suffering that anybody could ever imagine. So we do have enough say so in this unraveling of consciousness that we can make that choice. And I choose the former.
I
I
like
choose
it.
that life is this
Yeah.
delicate, delicate experience that we should celebrate fully. Matter of fact, I think about it. If we celebrate it more fully, we're going to actually just have less. We're going to create less destruction.
Yeah, I
I mean,
think
we can create it in a way that we can celebrate in a way there is this destruction, and we are doing that. Um, but that is my message. I mean, my message is my mission statement in my yoga classes is let's come together and and through the process of consciousness unraveling, let's celebrate life as much as possible.
nice.
Yeah.
You made mention of, I like the word that you used to describe the goddesses with flavor. That was cool. You're going to give a course on the gods.
Yep.
Is there a juxtaposition to flavor that is a balance point from the feminine and the masculine?
Well, in my opinion, a god like Hanuman is, in a sense, really a goddess in this conversation. If Shiva is contracting and going into the still place, then anything we can really talk about and
Mm,
anything that moves and we have to tell stories about it,
mm.
it's actually really a goddess
Oh,
in this
that's cool. I've
context.
never
So
thought of it
Hanuman would be
that way.
really a goddess in a sense because he's changing, he's their story like. So so goddess in my opinion is anything that is moving towards the cycle and changing in Mother Nature's evolving, changing nature of things and moving towards the masculine is moving towards stillness and calm and quiet. So the the universal. So so to me, anything where I'm talking about mythology is really talking about the goddess, even if it's a god. If that makes any sense.
It does. It
Yeah,
almost makes sense because if you're talking, you're acting, which is movement, which would be goddess.
that's right.
If you were to not talk, then you would be moving toward the stillness.
You're
Therefore,
completely on top of it. Yep. Yeah.
you're
I
helping
mean,
me. You're steering
how
it
do you talk
perfectly.
about what? Say that again.
You're helping me. You're steering it perfectly to understand this, and I love this. I mean, I'm so fascinated by non-dual philosophy. The more I meet people that are avidly engaging in this discourse, I'm just always in awe. I just,
Hmm.
I, it's incredible. But
What what
I
what philosophy are you steeped in?
ooh, um, I guess my first thing that pops in mind is I'll talk about a book that I'm currently reading.
Yes, yes.
I have not finished it all the way, but I'm gleaming a lot of insight, and it's called "The Case for God" by Karen
Hmm.
Armstrong.
Hmm.
And she was a nun. She went down an atheist path, and now she's more in the middle and seeing all of it as cohabit. We can all cohabitate. And she
Excellent.
she gives a bird's eye historical view of Homo sapiens uh, history of religion around the world. Start
Interesting.
going even pre well shamanic to Vedic,
Hmm.
Upanishad,
Interesting. Interesting.
Christianity or Judaism,
Yeah.
Christianity, Islam, Sufism, and
Mm-hmm.
and just very well researched, very academic, but
Mm.
fascinating. So
Interesting.
I
Interesting.
guess I'm just my philosophy is to just keep listening and just keep asking questions. And I love Socrates. I love the Greek philosophy. I love the Hindu mythology and philosophy. Um, but I grew up Catholic and I had a real turning of my
Mm.
back from all of that when I started going toward the East.
Same.
And
Yeah.
I'm just starting to have this reconnection again where I'm like, I want to know about all of it. I want to accept and love all of it. Like I want to embrace all the prophets and all of the sinners and all, like
Mm-hmm.
just so, and I think that aligns well with non-dual philosophy. The more I traverse
Mm-hmm.
that non-dual approach, I feel like I've just reconnected with it a little bit when you said consciousness wants to expand. And so I don't know, it just that makes perfect sense to me. It seems
Mm-hmm.
to explain a way of helps me to make sense of what I'm seeing
Mm-hmm.
in my local environment and then my global
Mm-hmm.
perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But so thank you for asking. I'm curious what other you made a couple mentions of Shiva and the stillness. Can you give us another gentle tour of other gods
I
and not
think I would like to talk about just for a moment, since we're getting close to the end of our time.
please.
I'd like to talk about like the importance of practices like breath work and
Ye-
prana work and
Yeah.
movement and exercise,
Mhm.
and
Yes, please.
because I think like in a philosophy, I think in any philosophy or any life, but just in the context of our conversation, to be able to kind of do what we're doing right now and have a deeper conversation, um, or to embrace a non-dual like tantric philosophy, which is quite dangerous, because you're not trusting in anything that's like human-like in a sense, um, and you're not really saying, hey, well, that's bad, I'm never going to do that, or you have to be very, very careful. So now we're talking about like, where's the prana in your body? Is your pelvis settled? Like right now, I'm so jazzed from the conversation. My pelvis is like a little lifted right now. You know what I mean? It's like such a great conversation. Like
Yeah.
we have this great little Shakti thing going on. Um, but um, if we're not doing like physical practices and like integrating, like I'm gonna have to get off the phone. I might have to like do a couple movements and
Mm,
breathe into my belly and ground out, because like things can get away from us. So I want to just bring it back to that I am a movement teacher. I really believe in sitting in meditation and um, making sure that the energy of my legs is down for the majority of the time when I'm standing and sitting, that my legs belong down to the earth and my spine lifts up, and that when that gets mixed up, when my system gets mixed up, that we're all doing the skills. We have the skills to um, bring balance and make the system harmonious.
mm,
So
great.
we can like be rooted in some kind of philosophy that's open-minded. I mean, what do you think? I mean, on some level, closed-mindedness is that the human body is not balanced enough, that we have to believe in something so we get our balance from that. We have to like believe in this thing that's other than us. Um, so I think really being in the body and being able to come into a place of equilibrium and integrate the hard experiences into our system, that's really supports this kind of conversation that we're having. I mean, I know you know all this, but I just think it's important for listeners to like have it said.
I think you're right. I'm really glad you did that because I was starting to get a little out there, and I think you're right. Right when you said that, where is my breath? What is my energy doing right now? So true. And I like, do you remember when you were practicing and at some point somebody said, "Oh, that yoga they're doing, it's just Western exercise and it's not
Hmm.
yoga. It's not yoga. It's like
Hmm.
it's just asana based and it's not real yoga." So I love that you're bringing it back to how important the practice is of observing body, posture, breath, nervous system function. Absolutely right. Thank you. That was good.
Yeah.
Nice
Yeah.
little nice little turn there. Thank you.
Well, it's for me, it's really important for me because I'm really skinny and really a Vata type. So I've had the blessing throughout my life of being able to have to really stay kind of balanced in a sense
Yeah. Good
in my
one.
body. Yeah.
Man, Joe, it's really I absolutely one of my most favorite things to do is to do this, to podcast and
Mm,
talk, knowing that like you and I are talking, but in the back of the mind, knowing that possibly somebody else is listening, and then you obviously are listening, so that it and then meeting when I met Andrew, and then I trust Andrew. I had a great, I really appreciate his vibe. Amazing. Him
hmm.
and Pam are awesome.
Love that guy
And
and
then to,
Pam. Yeah.
and then to say, Andrew, can you introduce me to some people? And then to have him introduce me to you, and then boom, right away, we can just jump right in and have all this common thread going on.
That's a good point. That's a good point. We did just drop right in. I love that.
And I think there's something just so freaking cool about it. I just love it. I'm so
That's great.
thankful. I really
Mm.
appreciate you taking some time out of your day. I know doing this earlier time for you was a little more challenging, so thank you for bending on that one. And is there anything, I want like I want to respect I do respect your time, and we both have a busy schedule. How can we conclude? What would be a good conclusion?
I
We
would
could go
like
through.
to I would like to say I think one thing is that I'm on Instagram. I don't do it a lot. I'm very minimum, but I give my theme each week. I skip some weeks, but I give my theme, and there. So if you're interested in like hearing like a brief synapse of what my class is, um, I put a lot of effort into those posts. So you could follow that, and I also have the 6 week series coming up, which is online or in person. So actually forget that will be over. But the yeah, just
But
I would
offered
love to stay in touch.
but offered
You know,
again. Off but
yeah, I do. I offer it all the
it
time. It's all rolling over. It'll be different material, but I'm always offering things. So I'd love to have people, um, study with me basically. And then the other thing I'd like to say is just how much I enjoyed being here. I really appreciated this conversation, and I felt like I made a friend, which is
yeah,
super cool. I really value intimacy. So I felt like just the way you hold space allowed me to just really be open and get to know you. So
thank you,
a
Joe.
little bit. So
Thank
hopefully we can have another conversation where I get to hear you speak a little bit more. So
Do that. Let's do that. And I remind me your IG handle, your Instagram name.
it's just Joe_Taft_yoga.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm following you over there, and I'm going to make a more of a point to comment, read, meditate, and next time I come through Asheville, because I have family close by to you guys in Greenville, Tennessee, I'm going to try to. I already was trying to convince my wife when we come up this summer. I was like, Tamara, is there any way I can just like take a day trip over to Asheville and, and go practice yoga with all these cool people I'm meeting?
Oh,
Yeah.
please,
So
please come. I would love to have you.
that would be cool, man. And
That
maybe
would
you
make
can
me
introduce me
so
to
happy.
kayaking, river
Yeah.
kayaking. That would be incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, or just get out on a hike, just a quick hike.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
We can hike within a minute drive from downtown. We can hike. So,
Nice, man.
um,
Well, I appreciate it. I do feel I made a friend as well. Thank you so much. And I look forward to our future conversation. And I wish you and your family lots of health and happiness.
great. Same to you, Todd. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank
Awesome. We'll talk to you later.
you so much.